a second, Shasky, but let's bring in Jemele Hill, staff writer for The Atlantic. Detroit native, of course, with the Michigan State. We won't bring up what happened in college football this season. We will not, but I want to know why Jemele became a Niner fan growing up all the way in Michigan. Jemele Hill joins us on the Boxer and Gerson guest line. Jemele, good morning. Thanks so much for spending some time with us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I know a lot of people are always very fascinated with the fact that I'm a Detroit native who wound up being a 49ers fan. But people have to remember is like the Lions have not been good for a really long time. So when I was growing up and kind of coming into my sports fandom, they were terrible. They were like paper bag on your head terrible. And I was never, I saw how miserable Lions fans were. I wasn't attracted to that. And, we're talking about like the early 80s. And obviously the team of that decade is probably the 49ers. And so my mother, she had lived in the Bay Area for a while. And so she kind of rooted for him. And I started paying attention to him. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Well, we're glad to have you aboard, Jemele. We are glad to have you aboard. Go ahead, Shasky, get in here.
Nice. I love – the Niner fans are all over the country, so I love it whenever we meet somebody and they have specific roots or a reason why they fell in love with this team. But break down the psyche of the Detroit sports fan right now. Like, B and I were talking about it, like, when they lost to the Seahawks, the Niners, that is, it was one of the greatest moments in Seattle sports history with the Richard Sherman play. How big is this weekend? I know Detroit Pistons have won championships, and I don't want to scoff at that. The Tigers have won a championship, I believe in '83. How big is this game for the Detroit sports fan?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, if the Lions go to the Super Bowl, I think it's already the biggest story in state history in sport, and as it relates to sports. The Lions have been pretty much inept for like 50, 60 years. I mean, this was their first playoff victory in, this season in 32 years. First time they won a division in 30 years. So there were a lot of new terrain for Lions fans. And so right now, when you consider the fact that they went 0-16, they were just 3-13 3 years ago.
Right.
So this is really an incredible moment for them, for the city. They've had to put up with a lot. So this means everything. I mean, I think win or lose, I think they know that this was a successful season. Of course, there would be disappointment if they lost, but I think they really feel like they have a future. And I think that is what is very different about this Lions team versus some other versions that we've seen that people thought might be successful.
Jemele here on the Boxer and Gerson guest line on the Morning Rush with Joe Shasky and Vontae Hill. Go figure. We share last names. Jemele, the pressure. We were talking earlier this week about the pressure on the 49ers side of things. They lose this game. That's 3 straight NFC title game losses. And then these windows, you've covered this game a long time. These windows close in a heartbeat here. So when I look at the game and I'm saying, who has the most pressure? Now, team-wide, they all have pressure, right? You got to win the game and get to the Super Bowl or whatnot, and it'd be a disappointment for the 49ers. But just in terms of individuals, I'm looking at Nick Bosa, the defensive line, not getting pressure on Jordan Love. We could talk about Brock Purdy or the head coach, Kyle Shanahan. If I gave you those three individuals, Nick Bosa, Brock Purdy, Kyle Shanahan, who would you say has the most pressure out of this Sunday against the Lions?
I think by far it's Kyle Shanahan. I mean, we were in the Super Bowl just a few years ago. And, a lot of Niner fans are still upset about how that game went because it was very reminiscent of when Kyle Shanahan was in Atlanta and they blew a 28-3 lead to the Patriots kind of on his watch. And so when you look at the fact that last week was the first time, one of his coach teams had come back from behind, it says there are starting to be some questions. I mean, I'm not trying to, rally some kind of, bandwagon that Kyle Shanahan should be up out of there. But, there are definitely some questions about his coaching style, like whether or not this team can handle some adversity if they get down in the game and whether or not he is the coach to get them over this hump and really have a legitimate shot at getting number 6, as in the 6th Super Bowl. So I think he has the most pressure out of anybody on the field come Sunday.
Who do you trust more, Jared Goff or Brock Purdy then?
I actually think, this is what I always say about Brock Purdy, as they have this nonsensical, never-ending conversation about whether or not he's elite. One, it doesn't matter. And two, I think he's a very good quarterback. people seem to forget this is just his second year. And, he's getting more and more experience. It would be foolish to not say it's Jared Goff, because Jared Goff has actually been to a Super Bowl.
Right.
So he understands, I'm looking like there's a difference, not necessarily in skill set. There's a difference in experience. And this is the kind of experience that matters at this time of the year. A lot of people ask me how I felt about what Brock's performance was, against the Packers. And I actually thought it was like a huge growth moment. And you also have to realize that Packers team is coming. I said this to Lions fans. I was like, listen, they beat you. They beat that team that the 49ers beat. They beat the Lions. Okay.
Yeah, Thanksgiving night.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that team is on the rise, and they are going to be a problem. But to me, the growth moment was the fact that Brock Purdy was able to collect and compose himself. And a lot of times athletes learn how to become clutch players through mental muscle memory. And so now he's got a memory he could go back to of bringing the team back in a game when it mattered and winning. And that is the kind of thing that goes a long way in his progress going forward. So I feel good about him this week. I think he's going to have a good game. And there are some, I think, matchups that the 49ers from the offensive perspective, that they should definitely win against the Lions.
Yeah, I think they could exploit the Lions defense with George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, and maybe Deebo Samuel. We're talking to Jemele Hill here on the Boxer Girls and Guest Line. Check out her memoir, Uphill. Of course, the staff writer now for the Atlantic. Used to be with ESPN doing big things there, but Jemele Hill's still around here doing her thing. Deebo Samuel, can the 49ers win this football game if Deebo does not play, Jemele?
Yeah, I think they actually can. And that's not to obviously diminish what Deebo means to the team. I mean, he's arguably the most electrifying player, certainly the most versatile that's in the NFL. It would be a big loss, but I do think between Kittle, Ayuk, and Christian McCaffrey, I mean, he's really key because if the 49ers are able to run the ball with success, I think that's going to help set up everything in the passing game. You know what type of team they are, especially when the 49ers get into a groove with running the ball. They're able to control so much of the game. So to me, as important as Deebo is, everything rests on their ability to run the ball against this team, because the Lions have a very explosive offense themselves. So if we are able to impose our will on them, I think that's a really big key in the game. And while if we had Deebo, that would make that task a little easier. I do not think it's impossible for the 49ers to win without him.
I want to accentuate a point that you made earlier. You said this is the biggest game in the history of the state for just a sporting event. I find that wild. We've been so lucky. We had the Warriors run here. The Giants had an unbelievable run. Obviously, the Niners at one point. You guys had the Red Wings, the Pistons, University of Michigan this year. Yeah. I know you divide the state when it comes to
don't bring up Michigan around.
I know you divide the state when you talk. But the Lions are it, right? Because they've been such a loser for so long, and it's football. Football's king. This is really that big, huh?
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's the part, people have to remember is like in America, period, the NFL and professional football is the national obsession. And it's no different in a place like Michigan. Now, certainly there have been championship teams in Detroit, as you mentioned. I mean, it was 20 years ago that the Pistons won the NBA title in 2004 when they beat the Lakers.
Wow.
And you also, every team there has had their turn with success. I mean, the Red Wings for a while, they had the longest championship drought in hockey. And they went on a run and were a huge dynasty at one point. So everybody there has had their turn except for the Lions. And so this has been such a monumental turnaround because I think as time passed, they definitely fell into the category of being like, this is probably the team in Detroit that's never going to win one. Yeah. And so for them to go from that to this, it's just created such a special vibe in Detroit right now.
Dan Campbell feels like the perfect coach for that team in that city. I know a lot of people laughed at him initially for that presser. It was wild, biting off kneecaps and everything. Got to do what you got to do, I guess. But he seems like he's embraced Detroit, and Detroit has embraced him. Seems like just the perfect fit, the perfect hire for that state.
Yeah, the thing that's interesting is I don't know what's the chicken or the egg, but a lot of the championship teams and a lot of the most revered teams in Detroit wind up taking the personality of the city. And, Dan Campbell, obviously, he comes across as a very down-to-earth guy. which people in Detroit definitely respect because everybody there is very down to earth, has those Midwestern vibes going about him. And it's a blue collar city, and he very much is a blue collar kind of coach, was a blue collar kind of player. So his personality fits the city, perfectly. And I think, a lot of the fans, they have so much respect for him. And, you have to respect what he's done. I mean, his first season, they were 3-13, and a lot of people thought that the Lions had just signed up for more of the same. And he had that bad season, and it kind of has never looked back. And now this team is in a real position to win a Super Bowl title.
All right, Jemele, I want to go off the board for just a second because, I was watching Below Deck. I know you're probably rolling your eyes right now, and with my wife, and you were on there. And, this is the Bravo Maniacs, right? Like, my wife is one of them, and I end up watching a lot of it. I'm not going to lie. I don't.
Yeah, I go to the other room, Jemele.
I end up watching. Is that the thing you get stopped for the most? Like, because, if you get onto Bravo, it becomes a whole nother subculture.
Yeah, and by the way, men, y'all always lie talk about something. I watch, I check in. Like, you guys get sucked into those shows. This is
exactly. Totally agree.
I may have for me once
Lucas,
or twice.
The producer here is obsessed with Below Deck.
Right.
Well, I would say that's probably in the top 3 of things that people recognize me for. I was a huge fan of the show. And I was lucky enough to do it twice because I did regular Below Deck and I did Below Deck Med. And it's such an amazing experience. And the thing is, you don't know. I get asked all the time, like, do you know what's going on with the crew? And it's like, you honestly have no idea. And there were shocking things that we found out when we watched our episode. Like, we didn't know about any love triangles, any, sniping going on behind the scenes. Like, we didn't know about any of that because they do try to make sure you're very removed from that and that you have, that you have your special experience because you're paying a lot of money to have a special experience. So, but it was great. Both Captain Lee and Captain Sandy are both wonderful. The crew, both crews that I had were really, really exceptional. So we had a blast. It is a good time.
Man, I don't even know how to follow up with that one. I don't even Below Deck. Now I kind of want to watch it now.
You've seen
No, my girl has it on.
Why do you have to do this macho thing?
See what happens with me, Jemele, man. So I do I had 2 jobs here. I do
here
television stuff and I do the radio.
He's the only one who works.
So I got to lock in sometimes. And the only show, I have to pick one show a night if I can watch it. And sometimes it's The Sopranos. Sometimes it's The Wire. I'm all, or maybe I'll play that.
If you haven't watched Housewives of Atlanta or The Potomac or Orange County, you're straight cap right now. Come on, Jemele. Tell my man he's full
episodes,
of it.
man. I know how sucked in you can get into it, Jemele. That's why I walk out. I was like, all right, that's enough for me. I got to go.
No, it really is. Especially I think most of us, if you're working a lot of hours, and even in covering and discussing sports, it's like a lot of people, you need guilty pleasures, you need escape, I'm a Bravo maniac too, so I get it.
Thank you. So, okay, now last question: what is your favorite Bravo show then?
That is so tough because it's either Below Deck, Real Housewives of Potomac. It's one of those two. I think I might say it's Real Housewives of Potomac. That might be my favorite one.
And is it true that you still own a Jimmy Garoppolo jersey?
It is very true. Look, any Niners quarterback that went to a Super Bowl, I have their jersey.
I like that.
No, I respect
that. My husband, when I got it, he was like, "You are foolish for that." He was always ripping on Jimmy Garoppolo. It was like, "You're not going to probably even be there. You're going to have his jersey." And I was like, "Yeah, that'll make it even a better memento."
Well, knowing Kyle Shanahan and quarterbacks and the way this market is treated quarterbacks, it is a wild seed, Jemele. You missed the Jimmy Garoppolo era right here in the Bay Area. It was
gift that keeps giving.
Shasky and I still talk about Jimmy Garoppolo. It's polarizing. 2 guys. We've had Steph Curry out here doing this thing, Klay Thompson doing this thing, and the 2 most polarizing individuals
ever
when it comes to sports: Draymond Green, Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yep.
Oh wow, that is. Draymond, I could understand. My fellow Michigan State alum, right. I could definitely understand that one. Given how I know his style of play, and certainly he's had some incidents. But listen, that's what happens when you have, you have a team as successful as the 49ers and as Golden State. It's like the expectations get kind of out of control, and certainly if there are players that people feel a way about, I mean, it just, I guess, adds more fodder for you guys.
No doubt. Jemele,
Thanks for joining us.
always a pleasure. I don't. You meet a lot of people, and I got to meet you out in New Orleans in 2012 at the NABJ, and to see your success, to continue the success that you have, man, at the Atlantic. I see you on CNN from time to time. Jemele, you continue to do great work. Keep doing your thing.
All right. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Anytime. Jemele Hill, staff writer for the Atlantic, Michigan State alum, Detroit native. Nice little insight there on the 49ers. Since she